Welcome everyone to meet the Bioconductor Technical Advisory Board. The format that we've come up with today is I'm going to start out with a few slides just about the history of the Technical Advisory Board, its current state, and hints about future directions. And then Charlotte will take over, and she has posted a number of questions into the polls section. So I'd ask you to take a look at the polls section there and the see results thing there, and upvote the questions you would like to see answered, and also feel free to add your own questions. And then after this brief introduction, we'll introduce ourselves and have a bit of a panel discussion. So we thought you might be interested in a bit about the origins of the Technical Advisory Board, which goes back to the origins of the Bioconductor project. And long before I was involved, I had to go to some of the original founders and ask about this history. Here's some information I got from Vincent Carey, one of the founders of Bioconductor, that it started around year 2000, Common Era, a long time ago, with objectives to produce and encourage the contribution of R packages for pre-processing, annotation, analysis of data from all types of genome scale experiments. Sounds familiar. They wanted it to be portable to Linux, Windows, and Mac. Actually, I'm curious about the usage of those at the time. My recollection around that time was that Mac was still a very small player on the scene. Linux was too, but quite a bit bigger maybe than Mac even, but my memory is a little fuzzy. There were 2 releases per year, which still sounds familiar. It was actually amazing to me to hear how much of this has continued and continued to be central to the project. So 2 releases per year, tracking the release cycle of R, and 2 open streams. One for release, that would be the branch, the stream that most users use, and it should be stable for those 6 months and only change for bug fixes. And then a devel branch where breaking changes are allowed. So it's a place for developers to create new functionality, add new packages, things that could break things, and test them before the next release, along with a protocol for deprecating components that are no longer used. So the actual TAB came to exist sometime around 2001, and I went back to the listserv, which is still in use for the Technical Advisory Board, and found its very first archives, which were in 2001 November, and I see Robert Gentleman starting with a welcome and first business, and it continuing with Vince Carey, Martin Mackler, and a few other people. So also impressed to see how these founders remain involved and engaged in the project, and we have both of those 2 here with us today. It was created initially just as something promised as part of a grant application, as advisory boards often are, but you never imagine that they will be continuing 20 years later. So at that point, just was a few collaborators with a fluid agenda and irregular meetings. Then I kind of divided this up into the next section, which, again, before my time, but from what I heard, was the next sort of major change in the Technical Advisory Board that occurred around 2012. By that time, it had become mostly inactive, and then was reactivated about then with Martin Morgan as the chair. And at that point, the membership expanded. There came to be regular monthly meetings with an agenda. I joined in 2013, so that was the only reality I saw with them having a very organized agenda and operating on time. So during that period, it had a very broad-based mandate of advice to the core team, advice around software infrastructure, organizing conferences, discussing funding. Essentially, most of the operation of the whole Bioconductor project, and membership through that period was by invitation from existing members. And then I'm putting the next phase of the history of the Bioconductor TAB is starting just last year in 2019. And this is when, to me, this is just another phase in sort of the growing up of the Bioconductor project into a bigger and more public organization. So several key things happened at this point. There was the creation of the Community Advisory Board, a recognition that the TAB was doing too much and that some of these things needed to be divided out in order to be addressed effectively by a separate board, such as conference organization, code of conduct, community outreach, and events. This was the first time last year that there was a formal governance document that actually defined these boards and how they should operate. It also created an executive committee, which is now Carey is the president. I'm the chair. I'm the vice chair, and Charlotte Soneson is the secretary. And it created a public nomination procedure for positions, along with voting by existing members. So it formalized how you can become part of the TAB. You no longer had to be invited by someone who knew you on the team. Anyone in the world can be nominated, and they will be considered for a position on the board. And the governance document specifies that 5 out of the 15 positions should become free every year, so that there is a constant opportunity to become part of the board. So if you don't have the chance to one year, there's still another opportunity next year, and to encourage some turnover and bringing in of new people and new ideas. It was the start of us having public minutes, so creating some more public transparency about how the project is being operated and what we do. And I can tell you that we're very serious about making sure those minutes accurately reflect what was discussed in those meetings, so that you really, if you really are interested in what the board does, you can go to bioconductor.org about and the Technical Advisory Board and read the minutes that we post each month after they have been approved at the following meeting. And all this has been a part of a concerted attempt to increase the diversity, accessibility, and transparency of the board, which I see as our major challenge that we have now, and one that will be an ongoing process that that is underway. So this is what our site on bioconductor.org looks like, and where you can go to see who the current members are, links to all of the previous minutes, and other information like the other advisory boards and core team annual reports, etc. So that brings us up to now, and what is the future of the Community Technical Advisory Board? And I've written down a few things here. I just wrote them down. I think they accurately reflect our priorities, but this is something that really we're looking for input on, and is something that the board will determine in consultation with the rest of the community. So the Technical Advisory Board, really its mandate is to help adapt Bioconductor to ever-changing science and technology. And part of how that's happening now has been the project becoming embedding through funding. And some of the major sources of funding for Bioconductor now are the National Human Genome Research National Human Genome Research Institute, AMBLE Project, Analysis and Visualization Lab Space. The National Cancer Institute has this informatics technology for cancer research program, And the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative has this, the Human Cell Atlas, which is also providing funding. So all of this comes with multifaceted, more complex requirements that help determine priorities for the people involved in that. And finally, the maybe most important responsibility of the TAB is helping to bring about sustainability of the Bioconductor project. And how can we do that? Well, this first item, I think, is key, the increasing the diversity, accessibility, and transparency to ensure that we have that we're reflective of the community that we serve and aware of the community that we serve, through ongoing, improving the efficacy of how we work. This is an ongoing process, trying just to communicate better, to divide up tasks and to get things done. And now through working with the Community Advisory Board as an equal board, which is a direct line to the community and one that is equally influencing the direction of the project. So here's our current technical advisory board. And with that, I will stop talking and allow the panel part of the meeting to begin. Maybe we should start with some introductions.
Yeah, so we have quite a large fraction of the members of the TAB here. So I don't know if we can have everyone say a few words who are here. Levi here. Vince is here. Do you want to say a couple of words about yourself?
Hi, thanks, Charlotte. Right, I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time when Rob Gentleman was at Dana-Farber and decided to build a group to help analyze microarrays. So I've stuck with it and pleased to try to discuss aspects that the group are interested in.
Thank you. So then it's me. So I'm working at the Friedrich Miescher Institute in Switzerland in the bioinformatics or computational biology platform there. And I joined the TAB last year, so I'm relatively newcomer here. Among a relatively large number of these people, actually. So I think there are 7 of 15 or so that actually joined either this year or last year. Then we have Martin here.
Martin Morgan. I started working in Robert's group in 2005 and took over project leadership in 2009 or so. And I've been enjoying coming to these conferences all those years.
Thank you. Aedin?
Hi, I'm Aedin Culhane. I'm also in Boston, in Dana-Farber. I've been on the TAB since 2014, so quite a while, and have enjoyed coming to Bioconductor conferences for many years that started in Seattle and now are moving worldwide.
Thanks, Aedin. I don't think Hector is here, but I saw Casper.
Yeah, I've been a member of the TAB since 2012. I've been a long time sort of user and developer. I've also been to the conferences for like ages. So yeah, I'm at Johns Hopkins.
Thanks. Sheila, I think, was also here.
Yeah. So hi everyone. I'm a postdoc at Cancer Research UK Cambridge in John Maroney's group. I am extremely fresh as a TAB, so I haven't attended a meeting yet, so I've learned a lot from just this presentation so far.
Thanks, Sheila. Laurent?
Yes, hello, my name is Laurent Gatto from the Duve Institute at Duve in Belgium. I have been with the TAB for 1 year. Yeah.
Robert was here as well.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Nice to be back at BioC. As a few alluded to, I was one of the founders as well. We had a pretty interesting group of folks that started to talk about what could we do with software, and especially if we organized it around a sort of a almost single discipline, so computational biology. And it's been sort of amazing to see how well it's gone and how people's careers have sort of developed through it. I remember Casper coming to visit. I think I just moved to Seattle and forced him into helping me move. But now, you know,
I definitely remember the trip to IKEA to buy your bed.
You know, so now 20 years later, he's well advanced in his career, and so it's been great. And for folks that don't know, I'm just about to transition back into, or I'm transitioning back into academia. I have a position at the medical school at Harvard, and hopefully I will be much more engaged for the next 5 or so years.
Great, thanks a lot. So we have Stephanie here as well.
Yeah, I'm Stephanie Hicks. I'm also at Johns Hopkins, like Casper. I have been on the TAB for 1 year now, and I've really enjoyed getting to see this community grow over the last year and this year. And I've been also coming to the Bioconductor conferences for quite a few years now.
Thank you. Wolfgang?
So hello, I'm Wolfgang. I'm at the European Molecular Biology Laboratory in Heidelberg. So I started working on microarrays in around 2000, and I was also just happy and lucky to meet Robert in 2001, and then being immediately convinced by the ideas and concepts behind Bioconductor. So keeping interested in new technologies and their integration. So we've been working on methods for RNA-seq, for imaging, for high throughput screens, and so on. And I'm sort of interested in the bridging sort of foundational mathematical methods with applications, and also in the training aspect of the project. So also sort of bringing theoretical people more close to biology and technology, and helping biological scientists and medical scientists to become more versatile and more powerful in their computational methods.
Thanks, Wolfgang. I think Rafa is not here. But Aaron is here.
Yes, I am. I'm Aaron. I'm a scientist with in Genentech research and early development, and I've been involved in Bioconductor for 8 years, I would say, ever since I submitted my first package. But I just started on the tab since last year. So yeah, early days.
Great, thanks. I think Mike also could not make it. So we're a pretty good representation of the TAB here. And we have a number of questions in the poll here, and please keep them coming or keep voting if you have other things that you would be interested in knowing. So the first question is related to funding. So I guess this is partly also related to what Martin was saying yesterday. So how is Bioconductor funded, and how does that funding actually relate to the TAB?
I guess Levi suggested in his slide just now about funding sources, but the project originally started as a traditional academic project, I guess, with Robert and colleagues seeking funding from the NIH and finding a receptive ear. And we've continued with that grant to this day. It provides the dollars to support the website and produce packages on a daily basis, and also to develop core infrastructure. And then over the years, the funding sources have diversified a little bit to additional NIH and other funding agencies. The Chan-Zuckerberg initiative currently, there was some European Union funding for a while. And actually there's an implicit and surprisingly unacknowledged funding source, which is many of the packages that are contributed to Bioconductor have been developed under grants from all kinds of institutes all around the world. And these are seldom funded, but obviously essential to getting science done and supporting Bioconductor. And I think the other part of the question, they go away just a little bit quickly. The other part of the question was about the relationship to the TAB. And I guess one thing is that, as Levi indicated, originally the TAB was a requirement of the grant. And for a long time, the membership of the TAB was somehow the stakeholders, the people who had grants that were supporting Bioconductor. And it seemed, pretty sensible to have grant activity coordinated in some way at the level of the TAB. And I think it's only really been recently that we've broadened that participation in the TAB to be outside of that core group of people who bring money into the project.
Thanks. Is there anyone else who wants to add something to Martin?
No, I'm just gonna reinforce what Martin said, that there's tons of packages that are being supported by other grants. That the thing that we think of less sort of supporting Bioconductor is grants that bring in money for sort of the core infrastructure. Yeah.
Great. I hope that answered that question. The next most upvoted question is more about the relationship between the TAB, the CAB, and the core team. So the different kind of responsibilities and if there is any kind of hierarchy between them and so on, that kind of types of relationships.
Well, I'll jump in so Martin can relax his voice for a little while. I would say it's a little challenging to discuss this in detail, particularly with the CAB, because it's so new. I think we have set up, and I think we need to acknowledge that Martin has done a ton of work over the past year working on the governance of the project, specifically the TAB, writing down rules of order and bylaws and so forth. And that this has also morphed into a governance of a community advisory board. We want these two to interact well together. We do ask that there be a liaison from the CAB to the TAB and vice versa. I think that has been accomplished. I think we still need to understand how input from the community advisory board will be translated into technical activities in the project. We just haven't had enough time to understand how that process is going to look. What else? There was a mention of the core team, and I think there was I'm sorry that I missed the session introducing the core team yesterday, but the relationship between the TAB and the core team is also very symbiotic. What we can do depends on what the core team does and wants to do. And I would say that the guidance from the TAB to the core team is funneled mainly through the organizations of the specific team members that they belong to. Maybe Martin could say a little bit more about that, since he is the manager of the core team. But again, I would say it's relatively loosely organized, but it seems to be working okay.
I guess the thing with the TAB is that the TAB can articulate all kinds of vision for the project, but that needs to be translated into some kind of reality. And the core team is the vehicle that Bioconductor has for translating those, at least some of those visions, into reality. Actually, one of the things about this conference that's really clear is that there's a ton of talent outside of the core team that can do all kinds of incredible things and that have made great contributions to the project.
And I think that's worth emphasizing, right? I mean, by far, most of the code in the project has been written by people outside of the core team. The core team have there's certain things like build the build system, the support side and various things that are sort of core team hats, so to say. But most of the code in the project is not under anybody's control, really. So we have like these people who are kind of funded from these grants that we think of as supporting Bioconductor. And that's kind of, in a way, that's kind of the definition of the core team, I guess. And then we have the TAB that kind of advises, right? But I mean, most of what gets done in Bioconductor happens sort of organically through people just deciding to do something. And then the TAB has a little bit of like potential for articulating some vision and has a little bit of perhaps manpower they can get help to, but it's very much an advisory role.
Yeah, I mean, I think the board has an opportunity to sort of help put some structure down to make it much easier for people to contribute and to give, guidance around, as we see, some really pretty amazing work being done outside. Like, how do we help coordinate that so that people are, following a single path, or at least have a notion of how, their work can be better incorporated and better reused.
There are things like the developer forum that originated in the TAB, wondering how we can empower developers to make better software, and that's been a really great success. Maybe another example is the emphasis on HDF5 for on-disk storage, which maybe isn't a perfect solution, but kind of discussion at the TAB level helped to set that as a priority. And much of the work was done outside of the core team funded by US grants. Looking mostly at Mike Smith, who's on the call somewhere.
I was just going to add that about this relationship between the TAB and the CAB, this is still a work in progress. And I think it's certainly our intention that there is no hierarchical relationship between those two boards. It's a division of labor into separating the things that need to be done in a logical manner and getting accomplishing the things that we want through these two boards and having communication between them. But the formalization, I mean, we're just discovering now new things that need to get done all the time. And so that's kind of on the list of I think both boards right now is helping formalize all of the roles that these boards will play going forward.
I just wanted to pop in there as somebody who's on both boards. For a long time, the TAB was organizing the Bioconductor conferences and events, and that was taking up a lot of the TAB's work. So it was seen that it was important that those be separated and the technical board actually work on technical issues as a side to community outreach. So, but the Community Advisory Board is talking tomorrow at noon. So if you want to find out what we're thinking about and what the priorities of the board are for the short-term goals and the longer-term goals, please join in on that call tomorrow at noon.
I think it's at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Right.
Yes, you're right. I'm wrong. It's at 8 a.m. It's breakfast. This was the noon one. Tomorrow's breakfast. Yeah. You're right. 8 a.m.
Great. I think that the next question is somehow related, and maybe this is also something that can be discussed also tomorrow in the CAB session, but there is a question of whether there are initiatives to combine the efforts to increase diversity in Biconductor with similar initiatives in the broader R community, like the R ladies, for example. So I know we have some R ladies in the board. Stephanie, do you want to say something?
Sure. So I'm involved in the R Ladies community by being a co-founder and co-organizer of the R Ladies Baltimore chapter. So R Ladies is a global organization, a nonprofit whose goal is to increase and promote the gender diversity in the R community. And so they work very closely with many different groups to do that. And I have, for example, last week I presented at an Our Ladies meetup event in California virtually, presenting ideas about genomic data analysis and Bioconductor. I have I promote these, I guess I communicate the ideas between like Bioconductor and the R community through various types of presentations. But if the question is like specific initiatives, there are, for example, meetup events that Bioconductor holds. Aedin Culhane runs the one in Boston, and so maybe she could speak about that. I run the Our Ladies meetups in Baltimore. But yes, I think that there's a great initiative and a great desire to want to make those communities closer together. I feel like a lot of that is going to be picked up by the CAB. And so I think I would encourage others, or if you want to know more about that, I would encourage you to attend that. I would encourage you there.
Maybe, could I add something too?
Sure.
I see this move towards increased transparency and public-facing activities of these boards, along with this public nomination process to bring in a diverse pool of nominees each year is really critical to increasing our diversity on the board. That people out in the community, have to feel like they might belong on one of these boards. They have to know that it's possible and either self-nominate or have someone nominate them, so that we have this representativeness in the people who are coming in every year. So that's a something that I think is an ongoing effort to do, and is also something that is discussed. We consider, I think, not just the candidates one by one, but trying to gain the appropriate representation of the whole board. Not just gender, race, ethnicity, also career stage and areas of expertise, geographical representation. And so that there's a lot of work to be done there.
Thanks. So yes, I think also this discussion, I agree, it can also continue probably tomorrow in the CAB session. And I think it also, what Levi just said, kind of covered one of the other most uploaded questions, like how does one become part of the TAB? So every year there is a call for nominations, and you can nominate yourself, or you can nominate someone that you think would be good for the board, and then there will be a vote where basically we take in new members every year. So I don't know if someone wants to add something on that, because it's more of a practical question.
I just wanted to call out to Laurent's efforts to bring carpentry style teaching expertise to the project, because I think having the project accessible to people increases its impact and the barriers to having a diverse community. So just being more intentional about our training efforts is really important.
So the next most upvoted question is maybe more conceptual. So the question is what the biggest strength of the Biconductor is as a project, and conversely, if there are any kind of vulnerabilities with the project as it stays, and if there is something that we can do about that. So does anyone have any thoughts about?
So last year, Matt Ritchie did a community survey, and I think 117 people responded. We'll present the results tomorrow as part of the CAB. And the things that were considered the strengths were like vignettes, documentation, availability of course materials on the website. And some of the vulnerabilities were considered sort of difficulty in understanding some of the class structures, and can't remember what the other ones were, but the results will be reported tomorrow.
I could maybe
I would
sort of
say
also,
Maybe Wolfgang first.
thank you. Sort of maybe the main strength in my view is interoperability at a technical level, and the more important human level is that people collaborate or cooperate in creating a bigger system by contributing packages that address individual tasks in scientifically excellent ways, but then also use interfaces so that users can actually plug together those different packages to create their own workflows. I think this interoperability is really what one of the biggest strengths, and maybe also a threat is if we have software packages or solutions, sort of platforms that try to silo people into one little box and keep them inside, and so don't open up to users exchanging data between different packages and so on.
I'm going to agree with Wolfgang that interoperability is key. I also think I mean, we have a good sort of a friendly competition in the community. And I think that leads to excellence, right? I mean, we don't sort of, from the point of view of the community, in my opinion, say that, you know, this particular package has solved the problem or has monopoly on analyzing a specific type of data or achieving a specific goal. It's relatively easy to come in and contribute something new, and if it's better, people are going to use it. As long as we, I mean, kind of a really important principle is sort of this ability that we want to be able to mix and match many packages and data structures across packages, which allows all of us to like try different things out, and if people come along, even sort of say unknown people or people who haven't worked on it for a long time, and they make an excellent contribution, it's gonna get used a lot. And I think that's a huge strength. That we kind of don't pick winners, in my opinion.
Yeah, these are all valid points, and this the interoperability concept is one that I hope is fully appreciated. Just how much effort is put into the nightly builds, where there can be all kinds of interdependencies between packages, and a failure in one can propagate to any number of others. So there's been a huge investment in this sort of very frequent checking of reliability of the entire ecosystem. And so I think that's a strength, but it's one that's, I think, underappreciated, because it really takes a lot of resources to accomplish that. And it has its own fragility. It'd be very hard, let's say, to transition that to some other mechanism, although there are new mechanisms for continuous integration and distribution that are coming on board. I think one of the challenges that the TAB has to face is the evolving technical milieu as the project grows and has to satisfy more and more diverse and possibly incompatible requirements.
Yeah, I think you know, one of the real strengths is sort of all of you, right? It's the people who write packages and contribute them, and you know, sort of try to do it in a productive and collaborative way. It's, you know, that is what the main idea at the start was essentially, if we define some data structures and a few, you know, sort of back-end packages, will people start to build on that? And so the strength is the people that do that. The biggest risk is that we somehow manage not to foster that community, and we manage somehow to make it too hard or too complicated to get stuff done. And so it switches from something that helps you get your work done to something that sort of hinders you from getting your work done. And, you know, some of Wolfgang's comments, I think, are appropriate, right? We need to be cautious that we're always trying to build software that other people can build on. And that's hard. It takes a lot of extra work, but in the end, it does make it so that stuff goes faster rather than slower for the whole community.
And maybe following on that, something I have observed in the recent years is an increase in diversity. And I think this diversity goes along many different dimensions. You know, diversity of kind of technical solutions, you know, type of data sets that can get analyzed with Bioconductor, I think increasing number of people that participate in the technical advisory board, creation of the community advisory board. And I think future will tell to what extent the project manages to kind of change with its community and many changes we see around us. But I think I want to be positive and see this already now as a real strength in the project at large.
It's striking to me about the, say, newer people on the technical advisory board and how many of them are engaged in collaborative projects. Aaron and Charlotte and Stephanie, Laurent in the proteomics space. And these, at least some of these collaborative projects aren't the kind where two group leaders get together and decide they're going to tackle a problem, but rather individuals engage with one another in the community and are having fun developing and pursuing new ideas and maybe being driven to high standards by each other. And I think actually Slack has been pretty helpful in fostering those interactions in a way that shouldn't be taken as commercial endorsement.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Right, so maybe to go back briefly to the funding issue. So there is a question here at the moment. Biconductor is mainly an academic project. Are there ideas to increase industry funding? It suggests that the question is for Aaron. But I think anyone can jump in.
Not to my knowledge. I've been used to me. Don't know if anyone else has anything else to say, but I haven't heard anything about it.
Sort of industry opportunities kind of glide by every now and then, and the project has never pounced on them. I think we're, I should have thought before unmuting myself, but I think we're not well suited in our mental space to take advantage of those commercial opportunities or partnership opportunities. We should probably ask Robert to comment. After all, he spent some time at Genentech and did contribute, enable a culture that enabled engagement of the Genentech community more in R and Bioconductor. So maybe I should stop.
Yeah, no, I think Martin, it's a good point. You know, it depends on how you think about the funding, right? So the funding that I see coming from companies is the stuff that pays Aaron's salary and Michael Lawrence's and the 30 other people at Genentech that when I was there were doing a lot of stuff, and people at companies all over the place that use Bioconductor and contribute back either software or comments or ideas. And so it's the same, I think Martin sort of alluded to this earlier. We don't have a good sense of the total value to Bioconductor that comes from the community that does things. But I can assure you that there's a pretty substantial community in companies that are contributing, and then there are the sort of students and postdocs and academics. I don't know whether, what the ratio of those is, but I think it's pretty close to even in some ways, because there's an awful lot of companies, certainly through pharma and other places. We don't see the banking sectors or the other places where it gets used. And then the other place, the big problem with funding, direct funding from a company, is that short of giving money to a conference, they don't usually do anything through RFAs. They, if you want to start a company and try to, sell things, then, the project would take on a very different demeanor, and one that I guess would not be super useful. I do think that there's an opportunity for Bioconductor to think about getting money from the R consortium, which is the more I think more palatable way to interact with industry, which is to have the industries give money to a consortium like that, which then allocates it out for projects.
So the next kind of question here is on becoming a Biconductor developer. So I guess Martin was yesterday talking about a typical path to becoming a Biconductor. So I guess maybe here the question is maybe related to how to overcome, let's say, the hurdles between each of these steps. So going from a user to a developer and from a developer to a leader. So if you feel like you would like to go from one step to another, but you don't know maybe how, or you would like to get support, or so, are there any thoughts from the board on how this can be done? How can Biconductor help with that? So I guess there are some things already in the conference, right? So there are workshops here to help, like introducing how to build a Biconductor package, what to think about, and how to do that in more practical terms. And Martin already mentioned the developers forum, which I think is another place where you can kind of bring up questions that you might have and specific technical issues. Aaron, you had some other thoughts.
Yeah, I was just going to say the Slack is great. You know, it's a nice sort of informal place where you can ask questions, and usually you won't get yelled at. And yeah, it's for some of the packages that I've helped sort of bring through, like I wasn't the maintainer, but I sort of gave advice on how to do it, and people are happy to do that. So if you're half of the way there and you just need to put on the sort of finishing touches to get your idea into a more better engineered state, then that's going to Slack and sort of asking questions is a great place to do it. At least before the technical review, where you actually do get sort of where it becomes a more formal requirement, you can just get a more sort of informal review beforehand.
One of the things that I think Vince very early on kind of recommended to me was not just to build a package when it's code, but also considering building a package if it's just an R Markdown document or just a data set, so that you can just go library and load it easily and find it easily. And I think the workshops and particularly the template that Sean Davis made for the workshops might be a useful resource for people. The Boston our Bioconductor for Genomics meetup did 2 sessions on how to make an R package and then how to make an R package into a Bioconductor package. And that's on the meetup website, and all of the slides and all of the R code to do that is on the website as well. And I think there's another workshop that will be done as part of this conference as well.
Stephanie?
I'll just say, in addition to all the wonderful workshops, for those that don't learn best by attending workshops, if you just want to, for example, look at a package, that's how I've always done it. I've gone to individual packages that have already been built, and I sort of like decompose them and I understand them kind of bit by bit, and then I backtrack and I figure out what's this, what do I need to know about this, and then if all else fails, then I like go to documentation. But it's probably not the most optimal way, but that's how I like to work. And so I guess the question was phrased as, is there a tip for becoming a Bioconductor developer? From my perspective, it's basically start with a built Bioconductor package that you think is really good, or that has the types of functionality that you want, and basically figure out how it was done, or message the developer themselves and say, like, why did you do it like this, and things like that.
I guess that's a question. How would you identify such a package?
I don't know. If you're using Bioconductor packages, you must have a sense of ones that you like and you don't like. I mean, I'm guessing most people don't automatically join Bioconductor to just develop a package right away. They probably attempt to use one first. And so they might be able to either know it that way, or look at maybe like download statistics, what are the most downloaded packages, and or I don't know. That's a good question. There's probably a variety of ways you could.
I think go with a package that's simple, that's literally got like 1 or 2 functions and does something that's very specific, because those packages tend to have less complex structure and maybe an easier access point.
I think there's something about interacting with people, and as you know, Slack is one way, but then I was thinking about Levi and his group, and I was wondering, Levi, if you had any sort of academic tips for becoming a bioconductor developer.
As in how to make that sort of a part of your academic career, and how to help make it contribute to your like, ability to get a job.
I was thinking more maybe like mentoring or things that you do in your group that you think might have tipped the balance and made things better as opposed to worse.
I think that, I mean, one of the things I'm happiest about in my group is the diversity of interests and backgrounds that we have, and that last copy number workshop was such a great example of that, of having like Marcel as a developer of core infrastructure, Ludwig doing developing downstream applications that make use of that core infrastructure, and Seiyun developing sort of killer analyses of it that uses all of that. So, you know, I mean, and I basically provide a little bit of guidance, but I mean, they're so active that I just try to keep up with what they do a lot of the time. So, you know, I feel like trying to create a supportive environment that allows people to work on what they love doing, and giving them enough freedom to learn and to express themselves through their work, and is the main thing. Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Okay.
Maybe one point I'd like to make is just don't be afraid. Just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's no big hurdle. That's just maybe with the S4 class, now sort of write lot classes actually don't. Just get yourself familiar with the most basic classes, like the summarized experiment or the G-ranges that sort of contain the data that you care about. And then write just ordinary functions that work on these pre-existing data containers. And then as soon as something is useful for you, it'll probably be useful for others as well. So just go ahead and make a package out of it.
So
But always work on something that's useful to yourself.
That's a good suggestion. Good advice. We're almost out of time. I just wanted to give people the opportunity to, there is a question of what are the most exciting technologies going forward? What are people excited about? Does anyone want to share what they're excited about going forward?
Well, I'm excited about the various delayed array backends that we can start to deploy for getting some more supporting bigger data sets. And yeah, I'm also excited about how we're going to manage this Python integration. So that's another cool thing.
From a biological perspective, I think spatial data, and that we can begin to understand communities of cells and how they're talking to each other and how disease develops.
Maybe in conjunction with what Aedin said, bringing in again maybe also more generative models or mathematical modeling that on top of the data, perhaps in conjunction with spatial or with temporal data that we're starting to collect.
Great. Then I think we're at the end of the session. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating. Thanks to everyone for listening in. Yeah, I hope this was useful, and enjoy the rest of the conference.